All right, well, pretty good parent.
Love it.
Here with Josh Emery, Dan Nickel. We're talking parenting
Yeah.
and how to be good parents. Josh, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about affirmation, how to do it well, the philosophical underpinnings of affirmation, but also just really practical tips of like how to do it well and help your kid be healthy, happy, and to be able to do these things on their own as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what would you say is affirmation? Because I know everybody says, oh, do affirmation, whatever, but like...
Yeah. Well, it's a little, as most words and concepts are, they're not always super specific and definitive. So let's talk about like how it gets used to compliment. Sometimes people think of affirmation as like to compliment. Oh, you look nice today.
Right.
Someone also say like, oh, I got lots of affirmations. Someone said I looked nice today. But usually what we're trying to describe is how to affirm, how to recognize with words something that someone's trying to do, like some acknowledgement. So acknowledgement's another synonym, compliment. But the reason it works or doesn't work sometimes is like, well, how are you trying to use it? So the what is some sort of verbal. Doesn't always have to be verbal. You could high five someone, you could fist bump, you could give a hug, a card, acknowledging, I see you, I saw your effort, I appreciate it, I like it. Sometimes we don't even have to have the I like or I appreciate. It's just the acknowledgement's like, oh, they saw me. Right? So like player comes off the court, kid comes home from school. It's just this like, I see you, I'm paying attention, can feel like affirmation. Now that's low grade. Not high level affirmation in a sense, but it's like, I see you, I'm paying attention, you matter to me, right? That's what we're really trying to get at.
By the way, that's sometimes non-existent at the 7th grade bus stop, I've noticed.
Not
a lot of fist bumps,
I
affirming,
see you.
Just head down, everybody stands there, waits for the bus.
Oh.
And I'm like, please affirm each other.
Affirming. You made it to the line.
Hey,
yeah, you
morning.
did it today.
Good
You didn't
morning.
want to be here, but you made it. I'm proud of you. I feel your
just an observation.
pain.
That's all.
You see it in teams that are really successful versus not successful. They compliment well. They high five really easily. They celebrate each other's like victories, and they're there for their mistakes. That's what we want for our kids. We want to be.
So this is kind of now getting into the why. Why?
The why is.
Why do we want to affirm?
There's multiple parts to this, so stick with me.
Yeah.
One, we are fortunately or unfortunately shaping how our children see themselves, how they evaluate themselves as humans, what material they are using to decide like how they're doing life, who they are. We're playing a major part in that. So to affirm, we're giving them food for thought about themselves. So that's another part of the why. It's like, well, this is our chance to actually steer it in a positive direction, right? Another why is it's teaching them to do it themselves. Like if gratitude and all the research would support gratitude's a great practice, a great way to live versus the emotional narrative that can take over. With our kids, if we can teach them how to affirm and acknowledge, affirm doesn't always have to be compliment. That's where there's like the BS blowing smoke up your kid's butt doesn't work. When they know like they weren't the best on the court or the field or the classroom,
right? They're
not going to receive your acknowledgement to say, I don't know if you were the best out there. I thought you played really well. I saw you try hard.
Right.
And I love that you tried hard. So what are we doing in that? Another part of the why, it's our chance to instill values in our kids that we think are good for them. So the value of work ethic and effort, or a good teammate or a good friend or a good, citizen or a family member or sibling. When we recognize that, we put light on it, it's likely to be more absorbed in their framework of how to be than just how the day went in their eyes, right? It's our chance to kind of like shape and manipulate what they're deciding to be by how much light we put on it. So if I said, for example, only referenced how my kids looked. Oh my gosh, look like you lost weight. Oh my gosh, you're looking so healthy. God, your muscles look really powerful.
Right.
They could be really positive in affirming. It could also be instilling a value of, I only care about your looks, and you should only care about your looks, which everyone knows like doesn't work very well. I don't want them to think that looks are bad or it's wrong to care about their looks. And I do want to affirm if they've been working hard at something. I want to acknowledge that. But if I only or regularly talk about one thing, it's likely to confuse them or implant in them as a construct of who they're supposed to be. So that's why I want to bring awareness to like, what are we affirming and how are we affirming?
Yeah.
Because it's really powerful whether we're doing it well or not, or where we're doing it.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like it'd be easy for parents to really subtly put in their own agendas.
We do. Because we're not always aware of what we're actually...
like affirmations, right?
Absolutely.
So it kind of sounds like, too, like the importance of, parents needing to... and I guess there's always that thing of like put on your own,
oxygen
mask first in the airplane, take care of yourself first, and you can help others, and really figuring out what your values are as a human being, as a parent, and what do you want to instill, and being intentful and conscious of that. Yeah. Before just throwing around high fives and, oh, you look hot. You look great. You were the hottest kid out there. You didn't score any points, but you were hot. Or
you were so much prettier than everyone else. Like,
who cares? You flunked that test. But boy, do you look good. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and we're exaggerating, but not too much. Like we can say, if we're unconscious, if we're not mindful of what we're modeling, instilling, and speaking, and putting light on, they're absorbed. Just like we've absorbed everything else around us. We've absorbed what our parents valued and talked about. And this is like maybe the most powerful thing you have as a parent is getting to kind of shape, at least influence, in some ways shape their value system. Right? And they're like, I want them to be a kind, caring person. I'm going to acknowledge, I want to affirm those efforts because those probably get a lot of traction. Inevitably, kids want to impress their parents, right? Good, bad, right or wrong. It just seems to go that way, that we want that sense of acceptance and we want to please our parents. Right. We can use that kind of dysfunctional, not ideal model, and we can talk about that later podcast, for their good by saying, hey, they want to impress me. Great. Let's make this good for them by letting them know I'm proud of them. I see that effort. I appreciate, I like this thing in them that I think is good for them and the world around them. So again, like effort, work ethic, honesty, good friendship, how hard you played in the big loss yesterday. So it was a 9-1 loss on the soccer field in the indoor game yesterday. Right. My daughter was super upset. Played horribly, she said. And I'm like, well, I don't think you played horribly, but I'm not going to argue with her because that doesn't work. Right. So I said, after a few attempts to try to create some levity in the world, like this is an indoor game and it doesn't matter at all. You had fun with your friends. You weren't on the couch. You weren't on your bed watching your phone. You were playing soccer, right? Yeah. Doesn't matter. I didn't play well. I'm like, not going to win this. I want to inject her with feel good. Right. And make her feel good, right? I can't. So I let like a few minutes go by in the car and I just said, I'm proud of you. Yeah. And I left it there. No other like squeeze this in or whatever. And I'm pretty sure I heard like a thank you, a very like a quiet, begrudging thank you. Right. And I was like, that's it. I just want her to know I'm proud of her for playing. She didn't loaf. She didn't cheat. She didn't do anything wrong. They played up against a better team. Mm-hmm. Like you're going to lose. Unless a miracle happens, right? And so that's how I affirm when they don't want it. I want her to know that effort matters more than winning. Right. Well, and on that effort, have you seen that? Was it Andrew Huberman? Was it? Yeah. Is it? Yeah. Yeah. His little study that he did. Well, I was on his podcast. I don't know if he did the study, but about showing praise versus effort, and so I think like they had basically like 2 different groups of kids. They all took the same test. One of them, they said, oh, you did really good on the test. Great job. The other group, they said, great effort. You worked really hard, right? Yeah. Took another test again. The ones that got you did great, got all the praise, did worse. The ones that were instilled with you had great effort, were impressed with your effort, all did better, right? And that was mind-blowing to me. It's so, well, here's why. One is affirming the way in which someone approaches a test, that's their effort. It's not necessarily their intelligence
Right.
or performance. The other one has nothing to do with effort. It's all about their intelligence or performance. And it can go either way any given day. So one is like, feels like it's the odds. Like hopefully you perform well. The other one is practice hard, play hard, pay attention because that works. And that's what we're trying to teach our kids is how to do life the right way. And I know it's a broad statement and everyone's got a different opinion on the right way, but work hard, be honest, be fair, be supportive of those around you. It's like, oh, those are pretty shared values. Mm-hmm. Highlight those because those are very repeatable. An excellent performance isn't always repeatable. And now they only got affirmed because they performed well that day, doesn't boost confidence. For them to be affirmed and acknowledged for their effort every day does show them like they have what it takes to get better and better. They're going to win some, they're going to lose some. But that's why it's so grounded and stabilizing to hear the effort and the character part versus just the performance or achievement part. So you don't want to just highlight the grades.
Right.
You want to highlight the work that they did. Because if not, they're going to think it's all about performance. When you perform well, you get recognized, and that's the only goal. That's what happens in a kid's mind, right? Like I work with a lot of kids and adults who've learned achievement is the best way to get approval.
Right.
But it's empty. Like it never feels that good, and they have to keep achieving because that's the recipe versus being someone who tries hard, being someone who's considerate or as a good loser. They lost, but did you see the coach, Atlanta Falcons coach who threw a tantrum after the loss yesterday?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Like they lost. They both teams like had no chance in playoffs. It was just like a worthless game. And one lost and wouldn't shake the other coach's hand and threw a little tantrum at midfield, right? Oh, wow. Like grown man who can't seem to lose, who can't self-regulate. Clearly not. But you want to teach, you lost, but I'm proud of how you handled yourself. You shook the other team's hand. You didn't put your head down. You didn't hide out under a towel. You owned it, right? Because you're going to lose sometime. You're putting a light on character. So affirming what you really want to see requires mindfulness on the parent side. It requires awareness of like, well, what do you really value that you want them to value?
Yeah. And so this is great because this is what I wanted to get into next was like, now if parents are out there being like, okay, great. I understand now what affirming is, why it's important, because I'm basically, helping shed light onto who my child's, I guess what they should value or what they think they should value.
You're kind of injecting your desired values in them.
So how as a parent then do you move forward and say, I guess, on a daily basis, what type of habits or things can they do to make sure that they're injecting good positive values into their kids?
Well, like chores, how they treat their siblings, how they get along with their friends, all those things can be somewhat scored. The goal isn't to score, but the goal is to set some kind of parameter of like healthy or unhealthy behavior.
Right.
And then when they do the desired thing, you recognize it. Okay. So the difference between praising and recognizing is really in the colorful language and kind of like the feeling of it. Like, you are absolutely incredible. Like the best kid I've ever seen. That's colorful, exaggerated language. Now it could be true. Right. It's not going to absorb very well for the kid. They're like, you're my mom, or you're my dad. Like, you don't know all the kids in the world. Like, you're just dumb.
Right. Right.
And now they stop believing my words a little bit because they think I'm detached from reality. That's the trouble. That's the BS. They think you're full of shit because you kind of are. You're like, well, you absolutely don't know all the kids in the world.
I feel like kids always have a good BS meter.
They do.
Right. And
so you don't want to BS your kids because when you want them to listen to you, they won't believe you.
Yeah.
Right. Because when you could have said the accurate thing, you didn't. So why can I trust you now? So you're always setting precedent of like, are you honest with me? To say you were not the best kid on the soccer field, but you don't need to be. You might want to be, and I want
Right.
to support you in becoming that. But you tried hard. You made me proud as your dad. I think you treated your teammates well. You listened to your coach, and after the game, you were a good sport.
Right.
I mean, that's all you could have done today. You couldn't be better than that other player. She was better a year ago, or
Right.
like before the game started, she was already better. But you could choose to be a good sport, a good teammate. And I saw that, and I appreciate that. I said all that in, I'm proud of you.
Right.
I didn't go through, because if I caved through, she's 14. If I went through all the lists, she'd be like, shut up,
Yeah.
Dad. Like, I'm a good teammate. Like, who's not a good teammate?
Yeah.
And like, listen to your coach. What choice do I have? Well, there are bad teammates, and there are players that don't listen to coaches, but she wasn't going to hear it. So
Right.
the how, I'll give you another example. This makes it sound like I'm like the best parent in the world. I'm not at all, but I do prioritize affirmation as much as possible. So I had my son help me do some home projects yesterday, and we were swapping out 2 doors for lighting purposes, and he helped me. And I had he's 11, and he's probably got ADHD and he's got a busy mind bouncing around. I had a few times say, hey, come back here. I need you to grab this, hold this, right? But overall, his attitude was awesome. He was super helpful. We successfully swapped out 2 doors, one of them being to his bedroom. And I was so proud of him. And so I made sure afterwards, like an hour later, not that the timing always matters, but sometimes it does,
Right.
is to I opened the door and just said, hey, buddy, I just want to let you know that I was really impressed with your work ethic today, and I really enjoyed doing it with you.
Right.
And I thought you did a good job. I want him to know, one, I like spending time with him, and 2, I want him to believe that he has a good work ethic, because that's part of me injecting a desired value for him, and to give him some like reference point, like a hold to kind of grasp to, of like, who am I? Well, Dad says I'm actually a good worker,
Right.
right? That's how it works. Like, what people give us, not always accurately or inaccurately, but we hold on to and we use as a reference point of who we are. And for my dad to say, you are these things, that holds weight. And so that's why that's why affirmation's so important in parenting, is you're shaping who your kid sees themselves as. And why not make them feel good about themselves and have confidence in their skills for, a million different things, whatever they are. The praise doesn't land very well because it doesn't have like context of like, you don't really know that. You're just saying this thing to try to make me feel good.
Right.
And this really isn't just like to make them feel good. It's to make them feel good about themselves as like a human, like not just have a positive emotion in the moment. I want my son to believe he's a good worker because that's better for him.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm not going to love him more or less. I'll probably like him more or less because I can't really, that one's just more honest and like, oh, he's got a poor work ethic. God, it's really hard to like that.
Right.
I'd love him. But I genuinely do like his work ethic, and I want him to know that because I want him to like it himself and feel good about it.
Well, and it's almost, I feel like it's like a mirror, right? For your kids, like having those affirmations, right? They
Yeah.
can say, and kind of, but the cool thing is, it sounds like what you're saying is that you can choose what your kid sees in that mirror by deciding what to affirm.
Well, we all
right.
choose consciously or unconsciously. And so they're doing that. And so we want to be like, hey, if you're going to be choosing and picking,
Right.
I want to like hand serve this like on a platter, this
Right.
better one. Because you could get your ass kicked on the field and feel good about yourself if you know what to look at, right? And not everyone obviously knows what to look at. So I want to help them like, hey, winning and losing, yeah, that's a thing. How well you play, that's a thing. How hard you try, that's a thing too. And you always have control over that. Like, no matter how bad it's going, knowing that you tried hard the next play is something you can celebrate. And that's not skipping over like we got beat and I want to learn from that.
Right.
But it is highlighting like, what do you do in those circumstances? So yeah, you want to avoid just trying to make them feel good. You're awesome. Like, well, are they awesome? And maybe say why they're awesome. Because if not, it's going to sound like just colorful parent talk.
Right.
You're the best kid in the world, Okay, that means not a lot because I'm your kid. You love me more than everyone else. That doesn't mean anything.
What are some of like the pitfalls that you feel like you've seen parents go through, like the real shallow ones that just don't mean anything? Is it?
They're usually exaggerated statements like,
Right.
I couldn't have been happier with you. You're like, really? Like,
Yeah.
or you're the best out there. Um, it's when you're trying to make them feel good more than actually instilling or shining light on a desired value.
Right.
Right. So a virtue versus a performance. There's not typically, like, the bad affirmations are generally affirmations that are highlighting a value that's maybe not the best.
Right.
Like, let's say your looks or your grades exclusively, not your effort, not the hard work, but just how you performed or your percentile.
Right.
I'm so proud of you. You are in the 90th percentile. That is a feel good thing, but the value of it's not as good as I appreciate your work ethic
Right.
and your humility in your achievements. That's a value that you'd say is better for them than to think perform well and I'm good. Because what happens when they don't perform well? Now they're bad.
Right.
And then they keep performing badly, and then they're a bad person. They don't have, and then not only that, but mom and dad were wrong. They said I was great. Well, I'm getting a B. I got a C. I'm no longer in the 90th percentile. Obviously, I'm not great. And my parents are full of shit.
Yeah.
That's where it backfires, is if you're not honest, now your words lack credibility. And when you are honest someday, they can't differentiate. They don't know the difference if you're blowing smoke or if it's real. But if you said, I enjoyed watching you, can't argue with that. You might not have enjoyed playing it, but I enjoyed watching you because it brings me pleasure to see you running around and like trying hard.
Yeah.
Did you get beat a few times? Well, yeah. But you beat the other player a few times. Like one wins, one loses every play, right? Made me happy to watch you play out there. That's also teaching gratitude, which is like kind of like a pseudo benefit of affirmation, is it's teaching them how to find good things and celebrate those good things, which is better than only finding things that suck and dwelling on those.
Right.
Like, well, what are you grateful for? Well, I didn't get hurt. These aren't my daughter's words yesterday. But these would be like, well, I didn't get hurt. I exercised. I did laugh with my friends before and after the loss. I probably learned something like, I guess I need to get better at this position if I'm going to play that caliber of player, whatever. And we got home safely and my parents were in the stands watching. No kid really says shit like that or thinks that way. But if I were practicing gratitude, that's what it would sound like. If I want to affirm in an attempt to kind of build that skill set of being grateful, I'd highlight those things like, hey, I just want to let you know it was really cool for Gramps to be there and us to be able to watch you. Yeah, you guys got beat, but it was just cool to like have a reason to get together and celebrate like your effort, you know?
So a quick question, are affirmations ever used for, I guess, criticism or trying to help fix a wrong or a negative, or just like basically affirming, saying, yeah, that probably wasn't the best thing to do. Like, what could you have done better, or something like that? Or affirmations just basically more positive and just trying to instill good values?
Well, again, if you look at the definition of affirm, it's an acknowledgement of something that's like real or true.
Right.
You're saying, yes, that happened. It's generally wouldn't be under the heading of affirmation. It would be how to help grow, or how to like constructive criticism or constructive feedback. It wouldn't say that's affirmation.
Right.
Generally, the way our culture uses that word and it's referenced is some sort of positive recognition. So it's not lopsided to whether just the outcome. Mm-hmm. But if there was a constructive component to it, it works well to give an affirmation. But I was going to say, when you brought that up, I started thinking how often parents can mess up an affirmation by too quickly bringing up the learning opportunity. Right. Like, I thought you did great out there today, but ways to get better.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, wait, was that just teeing up this chance for you to tell me how to be better?
Right.
And so the timing of your constructive feedback is vital. It's incredibly important to make it as big of gap as possible to your affirmation. Otherwise, your affirmation feels like a trick, like a game. They feel manipulated to then give them the real important thing, and that is you need to be better.
Well, and I think this goes back to, again, I think we talked about it earlier. I think a lot of us parents are like this, but, I'm kind of this coach dad for some of my kids, right? And I don't always want to be the coach. And so being able to find that balance of saying, okay, let's affirm, like, I love your work ethic, you did great or whatever. And then as a coach, when you put your coaching hat, right, and probably being really deliberate and not basically like mixing the two, right? So then they feel
100%.
Yeah.
I would say it works best if you're not in the coach mode, meaning if they haven't asked you to give coach advice, then you're just dad and you don't give advice until it's clear they're wanting it or it looks and feels like they're ready for it.
Right.
Otherwise, wait until it's a good opportunity. And there's the timeline on that depends on how old they are. The older they are, the longer the statute of limitations is, right? You could probably talk about it a few days later. The younger they are, the more quickly or the sooner you should talk about if there's a learning opportunity. But you definitely want to make a gap between sharing your affirmations about their work ethic, their character, their virtues that they're trying to live out, and your feedback. Yeah. They are a better human growing their virtues and their values than they are applying your performance advice.
Right.
Think about it, right? Like a better person is the person who believes their work ethic versus they figured out their slice.
Right.
Right? You're like, okay, great, the slice. That's not going to do a lot for you in life.
Yeah.
As a human. Your golf game, sure. But as a human, it's you know how to respond to adversity. And dad's recognizing your ability to recover and your perseverance and resiliency is admirable, and it's one of your best traits. A golfer is a better golfer the more resilient they are. Fix a slice here and there, sure, but that's just mechanics, right? One lesson could take care of that. Building the character of who they are is lifeline. Like that's
right.
That's way bigger. So withholding the feedback until it's obvious that it's wanted and helpful, and prioritizing character traits and virtues as more important to who they are.
All right, so now I got another question for you. When do you use affirmations to teach them about virtues and character traits, or do you want to try to probably let them know about those, like beforehand in a more structured way and then call them out in affirmations? So for example, it's like, let's just say you have a virtue of, you want them to try hard, like all the time. Let's say maybe they never try hard.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, like, and if they have a good BS meter, like, well, you tried hard. No, I didn't. You saw me. I was just laying there. I didn't do anything. It's like, Yeah. So I guess is it sort of like a chicken or the egg thing, or is it like you want to be really intentful about, and maybe this is another podcast or another topic of like how to sort of frame these. And I guess maybe as I'm talking out loud, I'm thinking like it's probably for parents to model it first, right?
Yeah.
And then these are the virtues that we live by. These are the characteristics, the traits that we want to have.
Yeah. It's always going to be one pot. Like how we think and behave and treat ourselves inevitably is going to spill over and impact them. So if I say it's all about your work ethic, but then all I do is celebrate my performances or loathe my losses,
right?
They're going to absorb a lot of that too. It's like, well, dad says it's about this, but all he really talks about is winning or losing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like not surprisingly, how we live our lives day in, day out when we think they're not paying attention is going to have a lot more weight than all of our intentional little lectures here and there. Not that those don't matter, but how we live. If I'm grateful often, when I'm grateful around them, they're likely to believe it and absorb it. If I'm telling them they should be grateful and I'm not, they're going to see the BS. They're going to see the hypocrisy, and it's going to significantly affect their ability to trust me and believe my words. So the starting point is always with ourselves, because our life and all those hours that they see has a lot more weight than a few of the conversations we have here and there. Now, obviously, some conversations in life are potent, but if they don't line up with the values of what's being lived, you kind of erode the whole thing. So in general, affirmations aren't really trying to accomplish 5 or 6 things in a parenting role. It's not like, well, how do I address this
Right.
in my affirmations? Like, no. Separate them out and just say, they benefit from hearing from you what you see in them so they can hold on to it and run with it. They benefit from you to hear what values you feel like are good for them and have a light shined on those things. And it's good for them to know how to like see those things and recognize those things in themselves and others, because that's a great trait.
Yeah.
Areas of improvement, separate subject, separate time. Maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's 5 days. To affirm is to help them stabilize and build a good life and have positive like feedback loops in their mind about who they are.
Yeah. So for the parent that either never affirms their kid or has now realizes, wow, I've really maybe haven't been doing it in the best way possible, what would you say is the best next steps for them starting right now? Like, is it try to do 1 affirmation a day, 3 a day?
Oh God, I can't.
Things like
just
that.
say when you say that, I think of the parent who's like says, "I'm not about to just tell my kid good job for doing the dishes. That's their chore."
Right.
And I would hear the sentiment behind that. I'm not saying you're like throwing Johnny a party because he did the dishes, which is his chore.
Right.
But to say, I appreciate your follow through on your chores, that costs you nothing.
Right.
Those are words that's one sentence. It takes 0 energy. Maybe it's more vulnerable than you like to be, but that's a gigantic win for your kid to see that mom and dad see I'm actually trying to be this person. Mm-hmm. Okay. Start small. Like you don't need to say anything grandiose, but just recognize one thing that your kid does that has a value that you value.
Yeah.
And that value is something you want them to value. So they did their chore. What's that? Follow through, right? Work ethic. You don't, again, not a party. Just, hey, I know it's your chore, but I appreciate when you follow through with your chores.
Right.
Super easy, right? And it feels good to hear that.
Well, and to me, it seems like such an easy vessel to show your love.
Yeah.
Right? Like that validation.
It requires no money, very little time.
And how much, and I know we talked about too that body language and that stuff, is a ton of the communication percentage, right?
Yeah.
But still, I think just for any kid to hear that, how important and powerful that is to be affirmed by the person who they're looking for affirmations the most.
Yeah, the most.
How important that is. And it probably, I would guess you can't affirm enough as long as it's authentic.
As long as it hits those right targets,
right.
There's no limit.
Right.
Because it's not overflowing or missing, right? Like, think about yourself. You're seriously going to get like fed up with people recognizing and appreciating who you're trying to be.
Right.
Those are always victories.
Yeah.
That never gets old.
Right.
Like, I just want you to know that I appreciate your friendship and your ability to listen and care for me. You're like, oh yeah, I'm so tired of Josh affirming my friendship role. No, you never get sick of it because it's who you want to be.
Right.
Right. And so you tap into like who your kids want to be and you acknowledge that there's no limit. There's never a max.
Right.
There's a max of how colorful and like flowery it is, because it's uncomfortable because it doesn't match up with like the reality. Now, one quick little caveat that if it's too flowery, whatever adjective you want to describe as, and the kid doesn't believe it, the tendency is want to argue with them in order to accept the gift that you're trying to give them.
Right.
I thought you played great at there. I don't know what game you're looking at. I played like shit.
Yeah.
No, you didn't. You're like, I'm trying to give you a gift here. Don't give it back to me.
Right.
So you don't want to get caught in that trap and say, well, it sounds like you're not pleased with how you played. I don't want to argue with you because I know what that feels like. I just want you to know that I appreciate your effort and I thought you were a good teammate And some days that's the best you can do. That's hard to argue with. The stubborn kid who wants to feel bad, they still might argue with it. And if they did, I'd leave it there and be like, hey, I don't argue with you. Like, I want to be supportive. This isn't supportive. I'll just stop.
Yeah.
You know? But the key is to not feel like you've got to inject them with this thing and they're pushing it away. Like it's 1 or 2 rounds. That's it. Otherwise, let it sit there. Don't feel like you've got to win them over in receiving your gift of affirmation, because then it's counterproductive.
Right.
So just say, hey, you feel that way. I don't want you to feel that way, but I can't fix it. This is how I felt about it. And as long as you know that I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
That's maybe the best thing you could possibly do.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, this is awesome, Josh. So yeah, I mean, to recap, affirmations, I mean, it basically is, I think you really hit on how important they are for kids to realize what their parents are truly sending them, or as a message of who they are and how they see them, right? And so how maybe just like parents can't just be slinging them willy-nilly, and they need to be a little more intentful. Yeah.
I think it's probably the most underutilized parenting skill there is, because there's no limit to how many things they can hear. It doesn't take up a ton of energy or time to say those things, and you're significantly shaping their value system and how they see themselves. Like, arguably, there's nothing more important than that. And you don't need to wait. You can, like today, just like start looking for things their kids are doing that's not just performance-based. Okay, not that performance is off limits. You got straight A's, that's awesome.
Right.
And you got straight A's because you worked hard, or you did whatever it took, easy or hard. I appreciate that, right? So make sure they're separated, the performance from the effort, or the character from the finish line. Okay, it's okay to talk about both, but make sure it's not lopsided to just the performance side. But it's something that we can all do better every day, and it's practice. Like, it's developing a practice of gratitude. If it doesn't come natural, you're going to have to work at it. So what? It's maybe the best thing as a parent you can work on. It's like, just look at affirming your kids. They're going to feel better when they feel like they're winning in your eyes. Yeah. Like, just start there and just keep practicing, get better and better at finding creative, productive ways to make them feel good about themselves in ways that you feel like are valuable.
All right, parents, you heard of that right from Joshua Emery. Your goal is to go and affirm your child today, or all your children, maybe your spouse. Go affirm everybody.
Well, yeah, and there's no limit to the people. No yourself, your friends, your partner, your coworkers. The more you practice it, the more you're going to be that way. Yeah. Well, awesome. I would like to affirm you, Josh, and say that I feel like you tried very hard today. I love it. Your performance sucked, but the effort was awesome. I could really tell. You got your ass kicked out there. What? Oh, man. God, you didn't give up. Boy, did you try. You try hard. Yeah, I love it. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again. And we will see you all on the next Pretty Good Parent.